Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming. It's great to see you all, such a packed house here, which is in many ways no surprising, I guess, for the topic we're going to be discussing today, and welcome to Barcelona. Open RAN has become a paradigm shifter in the telecom sector. It has changed the way we think about network technology, network evolution. We know it has implications for future network design. It has implications for the cost structure that the mobile operators and their ecosystem partners use, as well as the agility of networks in the 5G era. There has been an increasing amount of interest and broad-based geographical interest in Open RAN as a technology to help further this as a competitive force in the sector and to help operators achieve sustainable networks as we look towards 5G Advanced and eventually 6G. But equally, as momentum grows, we know that everything is a journey, and part of the reason we wanted to have this debate today, or this discussion, is to look at, along that journey, how do we assess the benefits of Open RAN technology, and how do we look at the challenges? Equally important, within the challenges, how as an industry coalescing together do we look at surmounting those challenges and moving forward? And so the panelists I'm going to introduce today, we're going to have a new format, which I'll explain shortly for this type of session. All of the panelists that you're going to see today are supportive of Open RAN technology and where it goes to help support the communications and broader sector. But to help further the debate, we're going to have a grown-up discussion about both those benefits and challenges. And we're going to have people speaking predominantly to either side of that so that we can move ahead and grab a greater understanding of these issues. We're going to have 45 minutes. Shortly, I'll call up the panelists. And at the end, we will reserve some time for Q&A from you guys, so please feel free to ask questions. And if we don't get to those in time, we'll be happy to take them offline after the session. So if I can introduce the panelists who are going to come up, and then I'll explain the speaking format. We're going to have, first of all, on the benefits side of the debate, which is going to be to my right and your left, Alex Choi from Deutsche Telekom, who is also the chairman of the O-RAN Alliance. John Baker of Mavenir, please come up. Miriam Sorond of VMware. Thank you. Thank you, guys. And then speaking to the challenges and how we overcome those side of the debate, we're going to have Raghu Hariharan from Rakuten Symphony, Honoré Labordette of Red Hat, and Dr. Dritan Kaleshi of Sonic Labs to round out our field. Thank you guys all. My name is Tim Hatt, and I am the head of research and consulting at GSMA Intelligence. And it's a great time to be here because as analysts, we like to take a neutral stance on the industry and technologies and look at them in the most sobering way possible. And so I think hopefully I can play that role fruitfully today. As I explained, all of our panelists here represent companies that are generally supportive of Open RAN. But for the purposes of our discussion, we've divided this into a debate format with three people to my right and your left speaking predominantly to the benefits of it, and people to my left to the challenges. But I think where we're going to get to is by the end is hopefully a consensus on the way forward and how we think about these issues. Before I get into the questions, I want to first give everybody a chance to give their company view on Open RAN and how you see the issue, and then we'll get into the questions. So John, maybe I could start with you.
Yeah, thanks, and great to be here. So, Mavenir has been a pioneer, if you like, in virtualized networks over the last 15 years, and so, from an Open RAN perspective, we're coming off the back of all the experience in delivering, virtualized network elements. We started in the core, moved that through now to the RAN, and so, we've been very much a pioneer and a leader in the Open RAN discussion. And actually, I'm pleased to be with Alex today, because I think Alex and I remember this 5 years ago. We were having the discussion actually how to open up the interface on the front hall, and that's where it all started. So, you know, from a Mavenir perspective, you know, we certainly believe that Open RAN has achieved its objectives. And you know, to put it in perspective, Open RAN was all about vendor diversity, and the world was coming to a conclusion that you know, the industry couldn't survive with the existing vendor base of 2 or 3 vendors, and as such, you know, it all started down on vendor diversification, and as we went down that path, you know, all the other technologies of virtualization, acceleration cards, and all those things have sort of fallen into place, but I'll save that piece for later in the discussion.
Yeah, no, absolute pioneer. Alex, please.
Okay, thank you, Tim. I'm working for the Deutsche Telekom, but today I'm representing the ORAN Alliance because I'm the chairman of the board there. So just to briefly introduce you, who the ORAN Alliance. I'm pretty sure many of you are already aware of the ORAN Alliance. You know, we have about 320 member companies, including 32 operators representing all these regional or national markets. And all combined of these 32 operators, we have more than 5 billion customer bases. So we have a scale. And apart from these 32 operator members, we also have about 290 member companies, and comprising not just the traditional vendors, but also startups and academia and small medium companies. So we have a great mix there because this is important. One of our theses of ORAN Alliance is we committed to nurture the open ecosystems. So looking back, when we started this journey back in 5 years ago, right here, Mobile World Congress, It's exactly 5 years ago. And now looking at today, I think we can be very proud of, all the achievements we made so far. So we have been successfully delivering our specification and test cases in 4 major areas. One is a front hall, open front hall. Secondly is an O cloud. It's a little bit special flavor of O cloud, and then SMO, orchestration management. Last but not least is a RIC, RAN Intelligent Controller.
Thank you very much. Miriam.
Hi everyone, I'm Mariam Sarand. I'm the CTO for our Service Provider and Edge Business Unit at VMware. First of all, it's great to see everybody back here full scale in Barcelona, so really happy about that. Yeah.
Tremendous.
So basically, I mean, as one of the first believers and adopters of Open RAN, which was first initiated, and then, of course, the ORAN Alliance came in, I could tell you that I continue to believe that Open RAN is actually going to be disruptive and will continue on this scale. I wrote one of the first RFPs in the industry that had an ORAN compliance. That network is being built today in the US. And basically at VMware, we actually provide the platforms to be disruptive and enable this across RAN and core networks. VMware is in 85 million workloads worldwide, and our RAN and core are a substantial part of that.
Thank you very much. Let's keep it going in the same order. Dritten.
Okay, thank you very much, and it is great to be here today. Dritten Kaleshi, I work for Digital Catapult, so I need to do an introduction because most people will not know. It's an advanced research, technology and innovation center funded by the UK government and industry, primarily for supporting the development and adoption of advanced digital technologies. We have a very, very large portfolio and focus on advanced digital infrastructure and 5G, which is the part that I lead. Speaking specifically on the Open RAN today, I wanted to make it clear the position for us as Digital Catapult on 3 points. So number one, for us, the open networking, of which Open RAN is a part of, is an unstoppable trend for telecommunication. This was in all of the keynote speeches today. Second point for us is that Open RAN has matured significantly, even over the 5 years that John mentioned before, and it is again evidenced by not only trials, but also deployments all over the world, be it all of the regions of the world. And the third point for us is particularly important to take a non-partisan approach to technology. And a non-partisan approach will identify challenges and, more importantly, will also classify those challenges in ones that are technologically based, which usually can be addressed with the right investment, and also the ones that are related to business and operation models, which require further change, and it increases. And I think that is probably what we will probably explore a bit later on. And a very last point, in Sonic Labs that we do, it's a program that Digital Catapult and Ofcom, the UK regulator, is running, and it is funded by the UK government as part of the 5G supply chain diversification strategy. It's a £15 million a year project and program of work. And in that one, we take effectively commercially viable multi-vendor systems, and we test in our lab in order to effectively point out where, through integration and interoperability, where products need to be developed further. And at this moment in time, over the past 2 years, we have worked with more than 15 vendors and 28 products, and we build about 6 to 9 Open RAN networks every 7 months.
Cool. Honoré, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm Honoré Lebredet, and I'm Vice President of our Global Partner Ecosystem for Telco Media, Entertainment, and Edge at Red Hat. At Red Hat, we believe that Open RAN is the wave of the future. It's the most efficient and flexible way to deploy and leverage applications at the edge, which ultimately leads to a return on investment made in the 5G infrastructures today. Open is in our DNA, so it's no surprise that we are working with a very rich open ecosystems of partners, all of the traditional RAN partners, as well as hardware partners, ISVs, software partners, cloud provider partners, to come together to realize all of the benefits or all of the hopes and promises of Open RAN. We don't see it as something that's future tense. Very much like the experiences of others on the piano here, we are seeing deployments. We're seeing very successful deployments. And those deployments are also leading to answering some of the questions and solving some of the challenges that we're going to talk about today, like cost effectiveness and power consumption and operational efficiencies and deployments. We did join the O-RAN Alliance in 2018 and started working with Alex in that group as part of the Working Group 6, which is actually the Cloudification and Orchestration Working Group. And so we're in the top 10 voting members of the O-RAN Alliance. So very happy to be here. Thank you. And I see some familiar faces out there, so hi to all of my colleagues.
Thank you very much. And Raghu, round us out from Rakuten.
Sure. My name is Raghunath Hariharan. I go by Raghu. I'm the CTO of Rakuten Symphony. At Rakuten Symphony, we are enabling the world's largest Open RAN network in Rakuten Mobile for both 4G and 5G containerized workloads. We have been in this journey together with Rakuten Mobile since 2017. Some early deployments started in 2018, and we went commercial in early 2020. When GSMA and Tim first brought this topic out that, okay, Rakuten has to be on the challenges side, I mean, I was a little bit taken aback that we are the biggest proponent of Open RAN. How can we be on the challenger side?
Same.
But then, I thought about it, and we have faced challenges along the way. For the last 5 years, we have solved a lot of the technological challenges, deployment challenges, made it economically feasible, demonstrated to the world where the benefits are for doing Open RAN. So we took every challenge as an opportunity. Starting with the very first one, that a very real-time sensitive workload called the distributed unit or the DU, everybody in the industry said, it cannot be done. You cannot run it on a general purpose processor on a Linux operating system. And that was the first challenge that we solved. And that paved the way for a lot of the Open RAN technologies to evolve, to develop, and build an ecosystem of a variety of partners and variety of people who contributed to make it what it is today. So Open RAN is right here, and we're all here to talk about how to bring it forward into the 5G and beyond space.
All right, thanks guys, thanks very much. And Raghu brings up a good point. I mean, part of the value of the session here is having the greatest proponent sitting on the challenges side, because it's important we all understand how to overcome these issues as an industry. And so hopefully that works well. But let's dive in. So everybody's had a chance to lay out the overarching view. I wonder if we can get specific on benefits and challenges to start. And maybe Miriam, if I can come to you first. Sure. From your perspective, what would you say, and specifically, are the sort of key benefits of Open RAN, and how would you assess those over time?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's many benefits. I'll highlight the key ones as you mentioned. The first one is obviously supply chain diversification. Once you have supply chain diversification, it actually leads you to being able to pick from the best. It also allows you to change and swap out. Then the second benefit comes from hardware and software decoupling. And that one actually allows you to do workload portability. And then it also leads to being able to do much better resource management. And then, of course, software is much quicker to update than appliance-based hardware. I apologize. So basically, you're going to have as much as software upgrades as you want, as opposed to waiting for appliance-based hardware. There's also a key element of programmability. A programmable network today is what is going to lead to a lot of these use cases and future uses of the network and efficient management that you're going to have in this network. As far as the long-term question, Alex, I think that it's very important that basically the belief, the funding of such initiatives continues, whether that's from the operators or the supplier side, on taking the risk, funding the opportunity in order for this to move forward. And the long-term benefit will be there. Basically, there's a difference between obviously a greenfield and a brownfield network. Some would be quicker, some would come in phases, but you need these key things in order for this ecosystem to continue to flourish.
John, just building on that, Miriam talked about a point I think we're all aware of, which is introducing, supplier diversification and driving that forward. I mean, clearly you come from a beneficiary of that. I wonder if you can speak to, your experience and how that sort of diversification, how you've ridden that wave to a certain extent, and the response to the benefits you're promoting.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mavenir has sort of lived on the diversification of networks over the last 15 years. We started in the core, and the fact that interfaces were open, in the core elements allowed companies like Mavenir to go compete. And and it's been a very healthy environment. And you've seen technology go from hardware to pretty much software now. Cores are being replaced with virtualized elements. So all the technology that has come out of that, is now what's actually being used in this Open RAN architecture. Yep. But in terms of the vendor diversification, you could argue that the wireless business has essentially been stuck in neutral for the last 10 years in terms of innovation and different types of architecture, et cetera. And what's happened over this last 5 years, and I'm not going to show my age, but I've been in the business since the beginning, and I've never seen so much energy and enthusiasm going back into the industry. The fact that we're having this debate with a full room of people is a sign of the enthusiasm that's really out there. And to say that in the last 3 years, Open RAN's created probably five or six new system suppliers. Yeah. I can count them on two hands. The numbers of radio vendors that are coming out of this. So, new money, new technology, new energy is going back into the wireless industry, which is really what's needed to take us the next 10 years of the evolution.
From the telco perspective, Alex, obviously you're kind of wearing two hats here, but would you agree with that, or do you want to add anything on?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I may add two more, one is cost efficiency. Yep. You may be, this is a challenging part, not a benefit part. Yeah. But if you look around, all this, different companies' booth, ORAN member companies' booth, you will be impressed. Yep. Because they are bringing a lot of new components, the new solutions, software, And if we are able to put them all together, then you can nail down this cost efficiency issues. So I'm very confident. On top, as John already mentioned, also Mariam, it's all about innovations. For the last few decades, since we started, in the beginning of the mobile communication, the 2G, 3G, or even 4G LTE, we witnessed a lot of technology innovation ongoing and being adopted and as a standard, and that's how we can able to boost our economy and also acquire a customer. But then, since then, we somehow missed, this technology element is missing. So our mission, key mission as an alliance, is to, as John mentioned, we just boost this innovation, ecosystems by, opening up these key interfaces. If you open up, disaggregate, and introduce the open interfaces, the open API, then you are actually bringing new innovators, and it's not just the big company, but also startup, academia. So this is a perfect chance. We already see the many good indications. For example, RIC, RAN Intelligent Controller. Now we can see many startups and academia, they jump on it and then start to deliver very interesting, innovative AI machine learning-based applications for the energy efficiency, massive MIMO, optimization, and etc. So I think we are doing the right thing.
Let's switch over and look at some of the challenges here, and again, in the light of not static challenges, but things that evolve over time and how we can surmount them. And Honoré, maybe I can come to you first. Security clearly is a factor that in any network configuration is paramount. I'll get your guys' opinion on this, but can you walk us through how you think the security issue plays out and how that can be assured in an open RAN environment, particularly when we're talking about disaggregated networks?
So it's important to note that when you disaggregate, right, when you separate things, it's important to always remember that you're going to have to put them back together again. So as it relates to security, the key is to ensure that security is embedded in all of the components. So as you disaggregate, you don't have to do security as an afterthought or as a second step or something that's considered to be added when you bring everything back together again. There's a lot of perception in the marketplace that open introduces a security risk, and with security being paramount. And interestingly enough, I think that open architectures are actually more secure because the security is embedded in the code. So if you start thinking about, you're going to disaggregate, you embed security in all of the code, you disaggregate, you bring it back together, the security is still there. So as long as we approach Open RAN and open architectures with the mindset that we're going to embed security in all of the code, even the open source upstream code, we're actually going to end up with a more secure environment than we had with a hardware specific or proprietary specific solution where you have to think about security separately or for every component in that disaggregated architecture.
Yeah, really interesting, and especially that the security is embedded in the code. I mean, people may draw parallels with sort of decentralized security in a blockchain environment where things are embedded in there and it can't be there's no one single controller. So I think that's an interesting way to think about it. Raghu, Rakuten has been a pioneer in this space for many years. I wonder if you want to build on that from a security perspective.
So yeah, a couple of points there. One is just adding to what Honoré said. Security has to be thought upfront. It has to be designed into every call flow. Even in the automation call flows that we build for zero-touch provisioning that allows large-scale densification, that procedure has to be secure with provisioning device certificates to make sure that identity management is under control. So security is something that we have to work on it day in, day out. And there will be vulnerabilities that have to be addressed with mitigations. And those mitigations today, Open RAN allows for web scale application of upgrades to the network, to a live network, which can be done in a matter of days. as against the legacy way of doing things only in the maintenance window, which takes months to do a nationwide upgrade to address any risks. So I think Open RAN does give certain handles to address these threats that are going to be coming up every so often.
Dritan, what sort of key challenges would you highlight overall in beyond the security issue?
Beyond the security issue, because the security is also going to be addressed within the regulatory framework that the different governments will have. So, for example, speaking about the UK, there are very, very specific TSRs, telecommunication security requirements, that the vendors will need to effectively adhere to, and the government is already, and this is specific, outside of Digital Catapult, already investing in specific laboratories, UK telecommunication laboratories, for testing security and helping people to meet those requirements. But apart from those, there are some very specific issues to deliver all of the benefits that were mentioned and some of the security. It's primarily system integration in disaggregated systems. Things that, for example, the Rakuten story and Mavenir story have highlighted, which is the specific IT skills that the telecommunication industry requires in order to operate in a cloud-based environment. And there is also several challenges, which again, the innovation that is opening through the Open RAN approach and open networking approach, it's opening so that the diversification doesn't stop purely on the black box disaggregation, on the G0B disaggregation into individual boxes, but goes further down to the software and potentially accelerator cards and down potentially to the chipset. So most of the Open RAN systems today are based on Flex RAN, for example. And even in that space, you typically will be looking for further disaggregation and increasing the supply chain. And we can see this emerging through small and medium scale providers, which need then to be fostered by the ecosystem and be invested into so that they can meet the primary reason why the Open RAN approach was fostered, which was the diversification of the supply chain in the world, in an industry that is very, very stratified at the moment.
Can I add a comment on the security discussion? Because I think that, and I want to put it, correct one issue. There's always one piece that gets left out of this security discussion, and it's about security of supply chain.
Yeah.
Everybody dives into the bits and bytes and says there's a problem with interfaces or protocols, but in reality, what's going on is that majority of the networks today are essentially sole sourced. And we've had the bad experience in the United States where to replace essentially one or two insecure elements, you've had to tear out the whole network. So, if you draw the analogy to the light bulb in your home, if you go and buy a different vendor's light bulb, you're going to change all the wiring that goes along with it. And I think that's the piece that really gets missed. This openness is bringing in diversity of the supply chain, giving operators a choice of who they're going to go buy. But, certainly the security issue has been used as, I would say, FUD, if you like, in the marketplace for the last couple of years. And it really is about security of supply chain is the starting point of where openness really starts.
Let's play it back over here. So a lot of people sort of ask the question, I think people generally accept Open RAN as certainly an innovative and at times disruptive technology that has shaken up the way the industry works. I think that's fairly safe to say. Maybe Alex, if I can come to you on this, like how should we think about the long-term timeline for Open RAN working into a majority of networks or getting to near that sort of position? How should we think about the phasing of this over a period of years? And how do you think that plays out?
Is that a question for?
Maybe if you could start.
Let me start. Okay, it all depends on the Open RAN customer. It's a service provider, their strategy and deployment policies for both short-term, mid-term, long-term. I mean, in a longer term, definitely, everybody will agree on this kind of we have to evolve our infrastructure into more flexible and agile and cost, energy efficient, cost efficient, etc. So openness is the very foundational principle to implement, to support that kind of directions. And the other one is intelligence. So these two, openness and intelligence, these are the two driving principles for in the course of the RAN evolutions. So, but for the short term, different service provider, they adopt a different strategy. Some operators, they take being more cautious and then starting with the more proven approaches, which is virtualizations. And some, they feel that they need to diversify. They need more vendors, so they adopt open front hold and then achieve this vendor diversity, and especially on the DU/RU side. And some operators, for example, like greenfield operators, they are very ambitious. So they want to take the whole O-RAN Open RAN system as a whole.
Yep.
And then they just start to build out it and scale out as much as possible to capture the opportunities. So it's all depends on the different operators' strategy and policies. But overall, the direction is they are moving into the same directions, which is the Open RAN.
And I'll come back to this side on that point. But Miriam, I first wanted to just quickly, if we may, we're obviously in the midst of 5G growth as the next generation of mobility. How much do you think 5G was a catalyst or is a catalyst for operators introducing Open RAN into their network? And do you see that as a further accelerating factor or no?
I mean, 5G is definitely a catalyst, but we also need to kind of look at, how Open RAN can be implemented, even from, like, for example, things like the SMO, service management and orchestration perspective that's been being driven by the O-RAN Alliance. Right now, a brownfield operator could actually utilize some of that on their 4G network. So I just want to make sure that it's not that you have to have a 5G network to be able to utilize a lot of these open architectures and software-based architectures. You can actually move to that. The core network was virtualized 10 years ago, more so. And so things are, and this is talking about an open telco, but for the RAN perspective, I want to, kind of drive that point that there's a lot in the O-RAN Alliance and all the other Open RAN groups that are existing that can be utilized without a 5G network. However, absolutely, 5G is needed in the sense of a lot of what 5G is driving in terms of the requirements and the vision is a catalyst for the whole picture of the use cases. So you definitely need to do that in order to have end-to-end network slicing, in order to be able to do a lot of the RIC. I mean, the RIC programmability requires a little bit of a 5G and open architecture and all the interfaces. So it will continue to be that. And then, of course, people are starting to talk about 6G right now. So
yeah, no,
let's not go there.
It never ends. No, it's going on there. And we could talk about these issues for 5 or 6 hours, but we haven't got all that time. So, yeah. And I'm conscious we want to give the audience questions in a minute and come to some sort of future outlook questions as well, because we've talked about impact and benefits and how to think about some of the challenges. I want to touch on something that we talked about, a few of you have mentioned, which is energy efficiency and sustainability. This has become a paramount feature in the industry in general. It's a huge priority. We know from our survey data, for operators, it's the #1 factor they prioritize in their network transformation plans. 84% rated as extremely or very important. We've just published some research today, Green is Good Business, looking at this in more detail. It's clearly going. Maybe if I can come, and I think this is where the lines will blur between challenges and benefits, but Raghu, again, can we speak to how to drive that energy efficiency in an open architecture network and how to track that over time?
Sure. So first of all, I want to start out by saying that this energy sustainability, just echoing your sentiment, is not an Open RAN problem.
No, exactly.
It's a problem across the industry, across the board. And as we have gone from 4G to 5G and beyond 5G, the channel bandwidths have increased significantly, the capacity has increased significantly, but so has the processing that is needed to handle such large channel bandwidths and be able to serve a wide variety of use cases have also increased significantly. But at the end of the day, and so you need more radios to cover the same geography, to provide the same or additional capacity, and you have to start thinking about measures that have to be taken in order to use that spectrum efficiently and effectively, especially with multi-layer management, being able to use sleep modes more effectively, to be able to consolidate things in a smart scheduler, tie the telemetry information with a RAN intelligent controller. Those are the challenges. I mean, and we're working actively on solving some of those challenges today. And without doing that, I don't think that we can build a sustainable future. And the way to approach that problem, or at least one way to approach that problem, is to have, with the vendor diversification of a wide variety of radio vendors, have a common interface to the radio, so that you can implement schemes and algorithms uniformly across different radio vendors, and not be stuck with certain snowflake configurations. Or you do energy service orchestration with this radio vendor in this way and another radio vendor in another way, and so on. So you have commonality, and I feel that Open RAN and the work groups that have been put together today to solve this problem are working with that mindset, that we will solve this in a uniform way. We'll go towards all the different approaches with a common energy service orchestration framework in place.
Honorary, did you want to add to that at all?
Well, I would echo what Raghu was saying and pivot off of what John and Alex said about the open ecosystem and the diversification of vendors. Every ecosystem partner and vendor that we're working with is committed to sustainability. Everyone on this panel, the companies, all of our companies are committed to sustainability. So I have to believe that the problem is going to be tackled in the context of that commitment to the industry for sustainability. It's difficult to come out and say, we're committed to sustainability and zero carbon footprint and lowering power consumption, and then take a product to market that's going to consume more power. So I just have confidence in all of us as an industry that as we develop all of these new technologies and as we innovate, we'll be doing it through the lens of how do we make sure that this is something that we can resolve.
Come to the audience in just a sec, but if I can swing it back over, just pivoting from energy efficiency for a moment. John, clearly economies of scale are key to driving costs over the long term and cost efficiency. And related to that are common standards that the industry can work around. How should we think about that element of this discussion?
Yeah, I think breaking it into the two parts, the scale now, to scale the industry, get common components and get common chip pricing, if you like, into this. And I think that's one of the challenges that the industry's still got to address. The silicon supply chain has been very biased, if you like, to supporting 2 or 3 vendors. Yeah. Now, with a lot of smaller vendors coming in, how do you get the same cost benefits into the smaller vendors that can then compete on price? At the end of the day, price is still going to factor in there, but you've also got other ways to innovate in there. So that's the first thing that's got to be addressed out there. And then in terms of open standards, I think some of the initiatives that we've seen from the UK, US, Canada, and Australia with the Open RAN principles, for instance, it's not mandated, but in terms of keeping specifications for technology open going forward, so we never get back into this situation again of vendor lock. And that's the important thing. And I always say that you don't have an open vendor unless that vendor can prove interoperability with somebody else. And that's got to be the mantra, if you like, going forward for the future of the continuation of 5G journey, 6G and beyond. Let's all take up the challenge of keeping interfaces open through specification groups, through industry fora, and allowing the industry to compete on a level playing field.
We've got about 5 minutes left, and I have another question for the panel here, but let's come to you in the audience here. I've got some lights here. Does anybody have any questions they want to put? Please raise your hand, and if the attendants can bring over a microphone to you, and just if you could give your name and company, please, before giving the question.
Sure, thank you. My name is Dr. Yeo Yang. I'm a IEEE fellow and a CTO from Asia Info Technologies, one of the largest OSS and BSS vendor across the world. I have a particular question to Alex. Everybody today actually talked a lot about CU and DU already. My question is at the other side of ORAN, which is about RIC. Mm-hmm. RIC is defined very good since day one. Everyone, all of our vendors, buying the concept of RIC. But gradually, we started to do the trials and we start to roll out the RIC in some testing field. We do find some problems in front of us. First, actually, some of the functionalities defined by RIC particularly for non-real-time part, have been overlapped with the 5G OSS part, particularly network orchestration center, defined by 3GPP SA5, another effective network node named MDEF, Management Data Analytics Functionality. Number two is the problem against the legacy part. The RIC actually have some conflicts with the legacy Sun system, which have been deployed by many telcos already. Number three is about the overlaps between RIC and the 5GC part, which is NWDF, network data analytics function. Those are the very typical questions when we start to roll out RIC. And then we go to the NOC center. These engineers said, okay, we got some system already. We have NWDF already. We don't need to roll out another RIC, in which a lot of functions have been overlapped already. That's a very realistic questions when we start to commercialize it.
It's like
well, in the interest of time, sir, I'm sure it's a very great question. Maybe Alex can follow up after.
Right. My
offline.
question is actually to Alex. Long story for short is, what is the future about RIC? Are we going to co-work with 3GPP SA5 and 6? Otherwise, in the future, we may still want to keep it as an independent network node, even in the 6G era, but it's very hard for us to roll out.
I mean, definitely, we will, approach 3GPP and make some proposals how we can better create the synergies rather than overlapping each other. So that's the action point we already, have a plan. So specifically, we will most likely, join the next 3GPP RAN workshop, which is scheduled mid-June. That's probably the first step we're going to take, and then we will see. But the future of RIC is, let me stop it, and we can take offline discussions. And I thank you for the very specific challenges and questions. But my quick answer is we are working on it, and we are figuring out how to resolve such issues.
Thank you very so much.
Yeah.
Is that really the realistic problems?
Sure, I think we got to wrap up the debate soon. So I think Alex will take that up with you offline. I'm conscious we've run out of the official time, but I hopefully they don't kill me if I ask one more question, just quickly, a rapid fire, to the whole panel in 10 seconds, each of you, no more than 10 seconds, if we can keep to that. What do you think is what would you say is the number one priority for you in Open RAN the next 2 years? John, starting with you.
Scaling and getting the economy, if you like, the ecosystem at the competitive price levels to compete and scale for the operators.
Okay, Alex?
For me, innovation, innovation, innovation.
Miriam?
Funding, funding, funding.
Interesting there. Dritten?
For me too, interoperability and innovation.
Okay, I like this conciseness. This is great. Honoré?
I would say innovation, collaboration, and healthy competition. Let's do it.
Raghu?
Adoption.
Yes.
I think we have had too many times this question has been asked, which side of the fence are you on? I think it's time for making that change, adopting the technology.
Yeah, and this panel has hopefully done that. So, as I say, we could talk for hours, and I'm sure more of you probably have questions, but hopefully the panel will be available for those after, and if not, then over email offline. But it just leaves me to thank my panelists for coming up and having a great discussion. Thank you very much. And thank you all in the audience. We've had a packed house. This is tremendous to see everybody back here and talking about these great issues. So thank you very much, and have a great rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.